Polish sliders and group loops can produce hard edges on your mesh. In the strive for the hardest of edges, the polish sliders is one of the best tools in the arsenal. This cylinder has creases on one side and polygroups on the other. Using the polish by group slider will polish edges between polygroups to a fine, smooth edge. Using the polish by feature slider will polish both polygroups and creases. Repeat to further polish your mesh. The open circle option will process your polish more aggressively. This sphere has polygroups to demonstrate what happens to your mesh when using either of the polish by sliders. Click the repeat to active button to repeat your last deformation. You can see that not only does it create edges on your model, but it also shrinks it a bit as well. Now we'll hide a few of these polygroups, then regroup the sides to the same polygroup, and then next we'll see what happens when we polish. What you'll see is that ZBrush rounded the areas that have the same polygroup. Open your Lightbox and click the Brush tab. Next, open the Smooth folder and locate the Smooth by Groups brush. First, a sample of the standard smooth brush. Next, undo and select the Smooth by Groups brush. This brush produces the same effects as a polish by groups deformation, but with a brush instead. In order to gain access to the group loops options, we need to hide a portion of our mesh to get things started. With that done, open the Edge Loop tab in your Geometry subpalette. Here you have a Group Loops button, we have a number of loop slider, and a G polish slider for smoothing. Click the Group Loops button to create a series of loops around the once visible portion of your mesh. Control click to unmask the center of the poly group and manipulate it to view the clean edge it produces. In this demo here, we're going to create a guardrail on the sides for our mech here. And from the side profile, I'm using the mesh brush with the lasso mode to draw out the general shape of the guardrail. Making sure not to change my camera angle, I'm just continuously using this mesh brush to add and subtract, holding the Alt key and occasionally the space bar to move my mask around after having drawn it. I often use this to align with other edges to make sure I have them straight or parallel. That's looking pretty good. I'm just going to move that into location and give it a rotate from the front view here into position. Alright, I like that shape thus far. Let's add a little detail to this rail here. I'm going to go ahead and split unmask parts so that the rail is now on its own subtool. Now let's do a little bit of work on this. I'm going to hit divide to subdivide and add a bit more geometry, and you can see we have polygroups on this, so I'm gonna isolate the polygroups on the sides here. Next, I'm gonna invert my selection and open the visibility tab here, and let's click grow a few times. Turn on my polyframe to see what we have, and I'm just going to Control W to polygroup that. So now I'm going to go in here and hit polish by groups with the open circle option, and you can see it gave me a slightly round edge on the sides. I just undid that real quick to perform another edit before committing to that. I'm just isolating the yellow parts, and now I'm shrinking my mask. And now we're going to go back up to the edge loops and click group loops, but we still have subdivisions on this model, so we need to remove those to use group loops. And now I'm going to click group loops again, and now I'm going to go ahead and use inflate. It's giving me a bit of artifacting there. It's because we don't have the right group selected, So we're gonna go ahead and control click that center group and now inflate, and you can see our nice clean edges there. So before we leave it at that, just go ahead and hit polish by features to see what that looks like. That could be a desired effect, but I want a nice rounded edge, so I'm going to grab this area here, poly group it, and knowing how ZBrush treats groups that are similar close together, I'm going to polish by features and it'll give me a nice rounded puffy like area there. This is no doubt a secret weapon for hard surface sculptors. Join me in the next lesson where we will cover ZRemesher.